What's going on, everybody? Today I want to talk about the patch notes yesterday, specifically what the implications of some few features in the patch notes are, because I've kind of gone ahead and re-delved into the patch notes a little bit afterwards and gone past the hype stage and really want to talk about what some of the changes actually mean in terms of the reality of the game, and we're going to do so in this video. Let's get into it. All right, so first thing I want to start off with is this is the English patch notes, so everything's kind of fixed up and actually translated properly to English. But the first thing I want to mention is mini update. This is considered a mini update, which is actually super hopeful for Diablo Immortal's future, in my opinion. If they consider this a mini update, I'd be very curious to see what a major update is. I actually consider this to be a lot of content. Yes, the events are really, really cool. The new events, the Echo of the Immortal and the Fractured Plane limited time event. Both of these I feel like are going to be actually fun pieces of content rather than the things that we've gotten so far. The Into the Dark and the Hungering Moon are going to be probably very similar to what we've seen before. And then the cosmetic, yep, kind of gone over all this, but I wanted to briefly talk about specifically the mini update, and then as well as a few things down here in the experience changes, whereas the treasure goblin improvement, as well as the vault class change, and then of course talk about the dungeon changes. I do not know where that is. There go. Here we go. So right here in the multiplayer requirement and high hell difficulty. So those are the four things kind of that I wanted to talk about. First off, the mini update, as already mentioned. Who knows what a major update is to them? I'm not sure if this is going to be adding a whole new entire area or whatever, because I think that adding a bunch of legendary items already is massive content for a lot of people, because that is what we do on a daily basis, is play our character, change our build. At least I do. So this is a huge massive jump towards build variety, changing up your builds on a daily basis, maybe getting some extra viability in certain game modes, and that's huge. And obviously they've kind of amplified the fact that you're going to be able to change your builds a lot by reducing the dungeon requirements to 2 players. This is going to allow you to go ahead and really farm up those set items that was harder to do previously before. Now, one thing I do want to mention is in this patch notes here, this says, and actually explicitly said on the Chinese version of the patch notes, it said that it would be harder, but this explicitly says that the dungeon's intensities will remain tuned for 4 players. So yes, you can enter with 2 players or 3 players, but you're gonna have them be very slow, very slow, if not unbeatable in some scenarios. If you're a player that was having a struggle getting into groups before, and you were a low combat rating player, well, guess what? You're not going to be able to do these 2-player dungeons at a reasonable pace, not even close, or even be able to complete it. If you're trying to do Mad Kings, for example, if you don't kill that last boss, the walls close in, and then you're going to die, and you no longer can beat that dungeon or that boss, which is very difficult for a lot of players to deal with. And a lot of players are actually going to be moving on forward. If you are dragging them behind, they're not going to wait for you to join their group. They're just going to keep on going. For example, a player that might have spent some money or that has a lot of combat rating, they're just going to go for it with their partner and then just run in through the dungeons. And so this is actually, yes, it's a nice change. Don't get me wrong. I like the change. However, the fact that it's tuned for 4 players, it's not oh, the ratio is a little bit higher in terms of difficulty for 2 players. It is exactly the same. It's exactly the same. And that's literally what it says. So I'm not sure if this is even a super positive change. This is a super key sentence that was kind of left out of the Chinese translation, because we had a poor translation of it because it was just Google Translate. So I think that because of this, it's kind of tampered my excitement of this a little bit. I say a little bit because I am a player that has played a lot, usually is above the combat rating, and I have spent money, and therefore I will be fine being able to do 4-player dungeons as a 2-person group. Oftentimes I'm actually running with 3 people, and we have a 4th person out, and we waste more time waiting for that 4th person than we would have just ran it with 3 people. So this is always a good thing, no matter what. So keep that in mind. But I do think that for those of you that might be excited about it, it may be a little bit harder, and that might be okay for some people. But then we have to talk about the class change improvement. This is a massive, massive change. And honestly, something that I think is a little bit bigger than a lot of people kind of looked at the patch notes, and maybe you didn't look at the patch notes for class changes because you didn't care about it, because you're not a class change type person. But I know for me, this is a massive, massive deal for people to get encouraged to actually transfer classes, because now you basically get legendary items equivalent that you can transfer onto. So you don't have to go and farm not only your essences again, but also legendary gear pieces to replace the ones you already have that are actually improvements. So it's going to be a lot less farming for that initial burst of fun early gameplay. This is huge. Very, very nice bonus for a lot of players. The vault, this is a big change as well, because this is going to allow a lot of the immortal gripe that, oh, we have to sit there and defend our vault for 2 hours, 2 times a day. Cut that literally in half. It's going to be I like this change a lot. This is also going to change shadows, because it's going to limit the amount of time span that you have to jump into the raid of the vault. And so you're going to have to be on time exceptionally fast. So this is going to be, honestly, probably less raid the vaults and vastly more of defending the vaults and being able to kind of counteract that. However, there will be probably a higher concentration, but overall less raid the vaults. And then, of course, there's the treasure goblet improvement. I think a lot of people saw this one, and including myself, and I didn't really mention in the previous video on the patch notes because I was just trying to give you the information and what I was excited about. But I actually think this is a massive buff to open world farming, which is shocking, because for those of you that know and have played Diablo Immortal here, open world farming is perhaps the strongest thing in the game to do already. In open world farming, you have a lot of treasure goblins that drop, and depending on the drop rate of these goblins that are dropping legendary items now, whether it's going to be like a common mob, whether it's going to be like a blue or a yellow or even an orange, this could drastically change the drop rates for legendary items, and honestly could drastically change the landscape of open world farming for the foreseeable future, because we may be hunting down locations that may be spawning more treasure goblins than normal because of how powerful they are now. This is massive. Before when I was reading the patch notes, I didn't really think about this. I just thought it was a cool feature. But now that I'm thinking about it more, I think that a lot of people, including myself, that have enjoyed open world farming more than anything else, are going to have to be paying attention to the drop rates here of these goblets and making sure or determining how impressive they are. And that's what I'll be doing. I'm going to be running through these dungeons as a two-person party. I'm going to be showcasing these over the next couple of days, as well as farming up these new legendary items and getting all this other stuff ready to go. Hopefully this video is going to be released tomorrow, which means that we've had about 5 or so hours of the new patch, assuming that they do drop it on time. And so by the middle of that day, I hope to be able to get to you a legendary item video on some of the new wizard legendary items before I move on to Necro. And fortunately, I can take advantage of the now essence transferable Necro items when I do transfer. And I'm also going to be showcasing the new events that's going to be happening tomorrow as well. Super, super excited. I'm not exactly sure actually if they said a specific time. They didn't really say anything. 3 a.m. August 17th to 3 a.m. September 14th. And then over here, it's just maybe just a permanent thing. Both of these, maybe it's like a queue system or something. I'm interested to see the 15 floor gauntlet, whether or not it's actually super, super difficult. Again, it's without gear, gems, and skills, which means that it is going to be a skill-based game mode, from what I understand. So hopefully, if it's difficult, I'll be able to give you a guide out tomorrow on it. Or if it's super easy, I'll just let you all know that it's super easy tomorrow. So stay tuned for those videos. I just wanted to give over and just go a little bit more in depth into some specific things about the patch that I thought was particularly important, because I don't think anyone's really mentioned about how this will actually impact things that we're already doing in the game, especially with like the treasure goblin, and also the fact that dungeons are actually incredibly hard as a two-person party. And I think both of those, the fact that no one's really talking about it, including myself, as I mentioned, I think those are kind of a mistake to do so. So I do want to go over those ones specifically because I think those are incredibly important. So hopefully that you all enjoyed. Let me know what you think about those two specific things that I brought up, treasure goblins, as well as the 2-person difficulty for the dungeons being as hard as 4-person. I think that Blizzard needs to still work on this a little bit. They're heading in the right direction. But I think that they need to drop it down to 1-person still, and I think that they just need to make it maybe slightly more difficult, or just buff the drop rates. They don't need to make it any more difficult, but maybe make the drop rates for a 4-person party a little bit higher. So yes, there's incentive, but again, the 2-person party right now is just not honestly an efficient and super feasible option for a lot of people, which is super unfortunate. So there you go, and I will see you for hopefully today, but if not, for the next video.